happened when silence became mandatory in your house. My father believed each person had a lifetime limit of words, so he rationed mine to 100 per day and made me write the rest. Ever since my mom died when I was 8, my dad became convinced that talking too much had killed her. She was only 45 and worked as a radio host, talking for hours every day. When the cancer took her, Dad, a former linguistics professor, snapped and created this twisted system where words equaled death. He gave me a jar with exactly 100 wooden tokens every morning, and each token was worth one spoken word. My older brother Bennett got 500 words a day because he was the firstborn son. My little sister Zoe only got 50, and by the time she turned 12, she'd stopped talking completely. She just saved all her tokens in a box under her bed. Dad used maybe 1,000 words daily, explaining that adults had already established their voice, so they could afford more. My chemistry teacher, Mrs. Jones, kept giving me worried looks when I'd slide her written answers, but Dad's medical excuse note kept everyone from interfering. Every morning at breakfast, Dad would ceremoniously distribute our tokens from 3 labeled jars. He kept a ledger where he'd mark down every word we spoke. Use more than your daily allowance and tomorrow's ration got cut by 20. Go over by 50 words and you'd spend the next day in complete silence. Get caught talking after using your tokens, and you went to the quiet room, a converted closet with soundproof padding where you'd sit for days with only written meal requests allowed. We could borrow from future days at a 3-to-1 ratio for emergencies, but Dad had to approve it first. Everything else had to be written on notepads, and Dad read every single note before we could pass it to anyone. Sign language was forbidden because he called it cheating. School was a nightmare. Kids thought I was either mute or weird. I met Cameron in chemistry class when I was 16, and he was the first person who didn't seem bothered by my silence. He'd slip me notes during experiments, but Dad would read them all later at home, making comments about wasteful teenage emotions. Things started unraveling when I turned 17. Dad announced that since I was becoming an adult, my word allowance would drop to 75. That same week, I had my college interview scheduled. Dad generously gave me a word loan of 1,000 words, but after years of rationing, I couldn't speak normally. I kept starting and stopping, counting words in my head, panicking about running out. The interviewer looked at me like I was having a breakdown. I finally slid her a note that said, "Sorry, no more words today," and left. The real crisis came when Zoe had appendicitis. She'd been saving her words for years and couldn't even tell us she was in pain. I found her curled up on the bathroom floor and had to choose between calling 911 or writing a note for Dad to find. I used my entire week's worth of words on that phone call. Dad was furious about the waste even while Zoe was in surgery. While cleaning the attic, I found Mom's diary. She'd been planning to divorce Dad before she got sick. The last entry said, "He's stealing our children's voices to feed his delusion. I'll use every word I have left to tell them I love them." I realized she knew she was dying and wanted us to hear her voice as much as possible. Cameron started helping me practice speaking in the woods behind school. He'd bring recordings and coach me through sentences, but I discovered tiny recording devices Dad had hidden in my backpack. He knew everything. That night, he showed me his lifetime word calculations, proving I'd already used half my allotted lifetime words. At this rate, I'd be verbally dead by 35. He locked me in the quiet room for a week. The silence was suffocating, broken only by my own breathing and the scratch of pencil on paper for meal requests. When I emerged, Dad presented a contract, promised to communicate only in writing forever in exchange for my college fund, refuse and leave with nothing. That's when Zoe exploded. Years of saved words came pouring out as screams. She shrieked wordlessly while Dad tried to tape her mouth shut, yelling about vocal suicide. The neighbors heard Zoe's screams and called for help. Mrs. Jones arrived with police, having documented everything for months. I had to choose, stay silent or speak. I grabbed Zoe's box of thousands of saved tokens and dumped them over my head. Then I talked. I told them everything while Dad begged me to stop, convinced I was killing myself with each word. He tried to negotiate, denying everything, then lunged at me, attempting to cover my mouth. They took Dad for psychiatric evaluation. My siblings and I got separated into different foster homes. I still count words in my head. Some days I can't speak at all.